If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
And we are back. I'm Chris Evans, the CEO of Survival Dispatch, joined tonight by my good friend Khalid Muhammad from Command 11 in-house. He's our 008, by the way. If you don't know what that means, go back and watch the past few episodes. Beside him, we tried to tag Randy with the handle 006, but it doesn't seem to be sticking, so we're going to have to come up with something else. Combat Wounded Green Beret back home in Texas. Below him, S2, in a very patriotic picture avatar tonight. And directly below me, Jeff MD, 26-year CIA operative, our in-house 007. And just a quick reminder, 007 does not live in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, per the crazy Canadian who wrote me a street email telling me I was effed in the head. And everybody knows 007 lives in Winnipeg, Canada. So anyway, tonight good English there. Holy moly. Tonight we're discussing the moment you realize it's not over. It's been one of those days. And so the theme is basically understanding terrorist patterns of secondary and tertiary attacks, just like Mumbai 2008 and just like Paris, November 2015. So in both of those instances, which are being used as the blueprint for these multi-city swarm attacks against America, citizens, obviously in a state of shock after the first attack, but thinking, okay, thank God we survived it. And then came the second, third, fourth, and fifth wave of attacks. And that's precisely what it's going to look like, unfortunately, when 9/11 2.0 hits here. S2, do you have the conflicted question handy, or do you want me to read it?
I always am ready.
Let her rip.
All right, here we go. You've managed to keep your family safe for the past 2 months, but your luck has run out. Your house has just been invaded by 5 radical jihadists. The men have tied you and your family up and looted your home of all your food and supplies. Before they leave, they notice the religious paintings on your wall. While being held at gunpoint, one of the men said that if you deny your faith, he will spare your lives. But if you do not, he will kill you and take your family. Would you defend your faith and your God, or would you deny your God in hopes of saving your family? Okay.
Definitely a loaded question. And hang out till the end of the episode, and we'll all give you our answers. We want to see your answers in the live chat, comment section below, etc. So, Khalid, I'm going to go to you first with this article. Iraqi military intelligence is reporting they arrested 3 members of ISIS in Anbar province. This is the second ISIS arrest in less than a week by the Iraqis. The first is below. Go ahead and expand on that, Khalid.
Yeah, Iraq has also all of a sudden become very active. With on one side, the U.S. is pulling out of the base in Iraq. It's 2,500 soldiers are pulling out of Iraq. And on the other side, you've got Iran starting to push their proxy groups inside of Iraq to force the government to make decisions that they don't want to make. The move against ISIS in Iraq is fantastic because that is something we were really worried about, is Iraq falling if the government fell. As long as you're taking down cells, and the first cell they took down was a major financing cell that was moving people into European countries and into the U.S. Now, with that out, and I think the 3 they got today, from what we heard from our friends in Iraqi intelligence, the 3 they got today are very senior commanders. They have a lot of intelligence, so I think there's going to be a rendition process that goes through now, that they figure out exactly what they know, and they may end up with a lot more arrests in the next 10, 15 days.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Khalid. So moving on to the next news item for an update. This one will go to Randy. And you'll notice that I don't have my watch on tonight. It went off the entire time last night. I took it off tonight because I didn't want to harass me. British Islamic scholar Abu Walid says we transform the UK into an Islamic state and will impose humiliating laws on Christians and other non-Muslims to make them want to convert to Islam. What do you think? It's 3 minutes and 39 seconds. Watch on or off. There's no way I could listen to the full 3 minutes and 39 seconds, so I won't inflict that on you. But I'm gonna play enough to get Randy's blood pressure up, and so he can come out of the gate strong tonight.
Equality to all of its members. Is there such a thing in Islam? Is there equality of faith? If we look to one hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, on the authority of Abu Huraira, Sahih Muslim. So no Sunni Muslim can really argue against Sahih Muslim or Sahih Bukhari. Rasulullah said, don't greet the Jews and the Christians before they greet you. And when you meet any of them on the roads, force them to go on the narrow side of it. And Imam Malik, he said the same thing as well. In fact, Umar ibn Khattab, who Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that if there was to be another Nabi after me, it would be Umar ibn Khattab in his own charter, not charter of United Nations, in his charter with the people of Sham, with those Christians of Sham, in his charter was Kafir and Muslim, they're not allowed to wear the same clothes as one another. If the Muslim, he comes out on the day of Eid and he sees Kafir with nice clothes, the Kafir has to take his clothes off and give it to the Muslims. The Kafir, when he walks inside the street, he has to wear a red belt around his neck, and he has to have his forehead shaved, and he has to wear two shoes which are different from one another. He's not allowed to, and he's not allowed to walk on the pavement. He has to walk in the middle of the road, and he has to ride on a mule. That's
about enough of that shit. So, Randy, how's your blood pressure? You doing okay?
Well, I just, it goes along with what I've said. These people, and man, he is a very good example of the folks that help drive this little mission. Because as I've said, and Khalid's attested to, and anybody that knows that part of the world, 85% of those people are illiterate. So they cannot read the Quran, even if they had one. And they have to listen to people like this telling them what it means. And you see how eloquently he just did that, right? To where, Shia, you couldn't even question this. But my point is, how is he addressing this, right? He's addressing this as this is coming from God, Allah, right? And it's a religious directive. It's a holy war to them. So until you address the fanaticals, and I don't say you go out and say, okay, this is going to be a Christian crusade, and we are going to call it a holy war too. But there are specific strategic and other elements of tactics and techniques that we could use to deploy to counteract that. But we're not doing that because no one even wants to say those words anywhere in DOD or the Pentagon or any entity up there in the whole defense complex. Nobody up there will say that. It's not. And in fact, if you try to say that, they will skirt you from it. But my point is, how are you going to defeat them if you don't fight them at the level they're coming at, or at least take away what they have to sell to the people? You have to be able to do that. And again, the last point, it's hard to manipulate folks like this, right? Because they think they're on a mission from Allah, from God. And so then it's very hard to tell them or convince them that they're wrong, basically.
The next article is even worse. The video is worse than what we just watched. So it's going to be the same question for both you and S2 before we move on. How do we deal with this? How do we deal with this within the framework of our laws and our Constitution? Tough question.
Well, as far in other countries, there's a whole different set of rules for that.
No, I'm talking here.
In America. Well, we would definitely have to get some people smarter than me on here to talk about how we would, at a government level, function and move agencies to do. But I'll go back to saying the same thing I've been saying, including the FBI, all of our federal agencies, if they were actually doing their job as designed and trying to make America safer and stronger and better, we wouldn't have to worry about this, because this would not, those arms would be our protection, right? As when Khalid mentioned that, you know, we've heard intelligence that our folks may just turn their backs and not stop them. That's what that's one of the things I'm talking about, but it goes way beyond that. You know what I mean? We're talking about in a lot of different federal agencies that are not doing their job, or they're looking the other way, or maybe it's just like this, including the American public. They have everybody up and so roar about everything political that no one's paying attention to anything else.
Yeah, exactly. So let me pull this next one up for S2. And Jeff, when I get to you with the story after this, if you want to answer that question, you're welcome to take a swing at it as well. But even Elon Musk is saying, kick this guy, this Boston imam who declared without Islam, America will meet its demise. And here you go, kick him out of the country. So I'm going to go ahead and play this. It's pretty rough. Well, I'm going to try and play it. For some reason, it opened in a completely different window and application. Great. Just a second here. Let's try this here instead.
The great spirit. There is even they would clearly tell you that there's a great spirit. There is even a statue in front of the Museum of Fine Arts with a native on a horse with his arms like this here, like he's making dua. And it's called, I think it's by Dallin, the sculptor, and it's called Appeal to the Great Spirit. Appeal to the Great Spirit. What is that? Dua. Calling upon God Almighty to send the European home, probably. Go back where you came from, because you've done nothing but cause hell in this country and all over the world. And you can hear me, America. You know you've done it. This is not the land of the free and the home of the brave.
So just so everybody's clear, he's saying all of us have caused hell on earth here in America, and that we all should go back to Europe and leave North America to this clown.
It's the land of the coward, the home of the slave. Islam is America's future, or without Islam, America will meet its demise. Islam means submission to the will of God. This is one nation under God. I believe that even if you lied, and even if you lied about this, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and you never believed that, and you didn't consider your fellow men as being your equal or fair, you're a bunch of cowards because you don't want to get on the basketball court with us because we'll whip you. You don't want to let us on the baseball field because we'll whip you. You don't want to let us on the boardrooms because we'll whip you, or at least give you a run for your money. You're outnumbered, and you're afraid that even your women might love some of the people who say that they're Muslim or people of color. Don't be afraid. We're all human beings. What's wrong with you? I'm asking you, you sick Americans, what is wrong with you? Not all of America. There are plenty of white people who are just as good as any other person. Wonderful people. There are many Asians, wonderful. There's even some of you black people and brown people. Some of you are wonderful. And wonderful is what we aspire to be. And how do you become wonderful? Submit to the will of God, or this country will fail. The world will fail if you keep on marginalizing and hurting the little people who are looking just for a chance for life. Stop alienating and be Muslim. I advise you, America, be Muslim. Open the doors of this nation. And even you people who say that you are Muslim, be Muslim. Submit to the will of God. This is the answer.
S2.
Well, he can kiss my ass. First off, he's not a real imam. That's very evident. Secondly, when he's addressing Americans, I'm just going to let it out there. What the fuck does he think he is? Does he think he's French? Is he European? No, he's speaking with an American accented language. He's American. If anybody needs to find a way out of this country, it's him. If he hates it so much here, don't freaking stay here.
Yep.
You did much better than I could do with that, S2. Kudos. Congrats on that.
I had a lot of choice words that I was mouthing as that was going on. But
And see, we can't see him, so we didn't see it.
See, videos like that's the precise reason to watch tonight. Jeff, I just want to get your opinion on how do we fight back against this crap? before all hell breaks loose? What options are at our disposal? Like when Elon Musk calls for deportation, can we do that?
Well, you can't deport that guy. He's an American. I can guarantee
Yep.
he's born here.
Yeah.
And what you need to do, I think, for a lot of these, if they're foreign and they can be deported, yeah, because they're basically inciting violence and revolution. But for people like that, you ignore them to a large point. You go, you're full of crap, and you walk on, because by listening to him and discussing it and trying to have a conversation with them, which you can't because they're kind of out of it. You give them credence, you give them some sort of gravitas that they don't deserve.
Yep.
It's like, I hate to say it, there's in all religions, whether it be Christian or Jewish or Muslim or anything else, you're always going to have those, the radicals. Okay, everybody believes their religion is the right religion. If you didn't believe that, why are you a member of that religion, right? You would be something else. But there are those that say only our little sect, only our little sliver is right and everybody else is wrong. And I had a discussion with somebody once, and it was a Christian talking about his Christian sect. And, he's talking about, it's the only true religion. I said, you're going to be really lonely in heaven, because 99.999% of the world is apparently going to be somewhere else, because according to him, only members of his church were going to go to heaven. And this guy's the same way. You just cannot, you just say, whatever, dude. And, you let them talk, because they're looking for validation of what they're saying. Don't give it to them.
Was he, a serious question, was he Jehovah's Witness by chance, claiming that only 140,000 people since the dawn of time will be allowed into heaven?
I don't know, but it was not, the guy was discussing it with was not a Jehovah's Witness. But
fair enough. All right.
Yeah.
This is the article I've got pulled up for you anyway, Jeff. So it's from Sarah Adams. Heads up. Oh no, wait a minute. I'm going to give you a different one because I want Khalid to answer that for a very specific reason. Okay. You get this one instead, Jeff. The Taliban and ISIS-K have reached an agreement to use the Baglan coal mine. A large portion of the mine's revenue goes to ISIS, which uses it to purchase weapons and supplies for its forces. So since you've been in Afghanistan, maybe give our audience some insight into just how resource rich that part of the world is. They have a lot of natural resources at their disposal.
Yeah, they do. They've got a lot of mineral wealth, gold, silver, copper, molybdenum. They got lots of wealth. And it's not so much that they have more than anyone else in the world. It's just that it's never really been exploited. Gotcha. There were mines for gold and silver and lapis lazuli, things like that. But a lot of what we consider critical minerals have been there, but no one has mined them because, it's difficult to do anything there. They have a coal mine. Okay, how are they getting the coal out? I mean, not out of the mine itself, but, you're going to, if you don't use it domestically, you got to export it. How are they going to export it? I don't think there's any real railroads out of Iran. Out of Afghanistan, except maybe to the north, maybe into Uzbekistan or something like that. The infrastructure, the transportation infrastructure is horrible. And so that's why I think people are focusing on high value, low volume mineral production. Gold and silver, to where, whatever you get out, you can make money on it. But if you're talking about like something like iron or coal, where you've got to ship, the product you ship is in the thousands or millions of tons, and the price of it is in dollars per ton, $100 a ton. You've got to have transportation to get that out. Yeah. And you get the biggest, iron deposits in the world, but if you can't move them, who cares?
Yeah,
so they're looking at strategic metals, high value stuff.
So, Khalid, there's a very specific reason I bumped this to you, because of the troll who was in the comment section last night who told us we were all idiots.
Yeah.
And that the Taliban's at war with Al Qaeda's at war with ISIS, and they all hate each other. So, Sarah, just read her sentence and you can take it from there. Heads up, ignoring the fact that these groups have now come together under a resistance council won't help anyone. So who's in this picture first and foremost, Khalid, and then explain the alliance, I guess, that's been formed between them.
Let's start from where the flag was. You had the leader of the Taliban, you had the leader of the Haqqani group, you had the strategic mastermind of Al Qaeda, you had Hamza bin Laden, and you had the head of ISKP. Okay. Last night I went a little bit off script, and I went after that guy that was saying, you know, they're not working together because the UN says they're not working together. When's the UN ever been right about anything? I mean, please, come on, let's be honest. We're on ground in Afghanistan. We see these guys working together. The IRGC has 3 provinces right across the Iran border where they are fully operational. The Brookings Institute wrote a paper a year into the Taliban government saying Iran has so much control over the Taliban that whatever Iran says, the Taliban does. And that is Shia Sunni. And they're like this. Then you have Al-Qaeda and Islamic State, which should actually, in people's minds, be rivals to each other because they're both global terror groups and they have different objectives. But there was a great comment posted today. And I think it was S2 that posted it, but it said, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And that is the mentality they are working with right now. It's like we said last night, when you are talking about a 10-year plan to take control of the entire world, there is no such thing as Shia Sunni. There is no such thing as Al-Qaeda and Islamic State. It's one army now. And they're all going to fight. They're all going to conquer whatever they need to conquer. And then they'll go back to fighting each other. And that's basically how it is. I want to take 2 seconds in the couple of videos you played in the story you showed. These are monkeys. This is a Muslim saying that the people that were just talking on those videos are absolute monkeys. They have no idea what the Quran says because their understanding of the Quran is what a teacher who doesn't know how to read the Quran has been told by another teacher who doesn't know how to read the Quran, by another teacher who's been told what the Quran says. You can't read Arabic, so you don't understand what it says. The benefit I have when I read the Quran, I read it in English. So I actually know what it says. I know what it means. I'm not one of these monkeys out there that go and pray 5 times a day and have no idea what you're saying when you're praying. That's what these guys are doing. They're taking the mentality that's been planted in their head by their extremists and the radical religious figures, and they're preaching it out to people saying, oh, we need to hate the Jews. We need to hate the Christians. We need to do that. The Quran does not say that. Jesus Christ in the Quran, when it's the end times and the Savior comes back to save the planet, it's Jesus Christ. It's not Muhammad. It's Jesus that comes back and saves the planet. And when people actually read the Quran and understand that what they're hearing from these monkeys is not what Islam says. I mean, these guys are literally speaking Osama bin Laden's language. And he's teaching exactly what Osama wanted you to believe about Islam. Violent, hateful. We want to conquer the world. We want to kill people. You need to start discounting these people. And America, the answer for America is kick them the hell out. Whether they're Americans, if they're American citizens, lock them in jail. Yeah. We have special jails here in Pakistan for terrorists. We lock them away and we put them away in dark rooms, and they never see the light of day again.
Yeah, but do y'all have alligator Alcatraz like us in Florida?
Oh my God, I would have so much fun sending people to alligator Alcatraz. Oh my God.
Hashtag Florida man, by the way.
Yeah.
So Khalid, before we move on to Randy, could you quickly kick this picture off, and then I'm going to go to Randy with the video that goes with it.
Okay. On September 2nd, a branch of the Tariq Taliban called the Hafiz Bul Bahadur group launched an attack on a paramilitary center in Bannu, which is in the northeastern part of Pakistan. This is them studying the actual location. They took pictures, they took recon. The reason we talk about the reconnaissance pictures that they're taking in the US right now is because they're building models like this. They understand how the buildings are laid out. They understand where they can enter from. They understand how they can attack. They sent 1 vehicle-based IED and 3 suicide bombers. And the 3 suicide bombers all had dead man's triggers on them. So as soon as they hit the ground, they blew up.
All right.
Our armed forces wrapped them up, and I think it was about 2 hours. We wrapped them all up. But the reason this picture is important is that it helps people understand that they are not just talking about things. They make models, and then they figure out how to penetrate from the model.
Yep, I appreciate that. So, Randy, that leads into this video and the story here. So, first suicide bomber on a motorcycle, was shot at a distance by security forces. He detonated because of dead man's trigger in an empty street without causing any damage. The rest of Bomber 2, sorry, this isn't somebody's English for this as a first language. The rest of Bomber 2 is killed without detonation at a safe distance. So far, caused no life to security forces. All right, 26 seconds or 25 seconds. So basically, if I'm understanding this correctly, these guys had, suicide bomber vests on. They were carrying out the attack against that outpost that they built the model of, but they were repelled by the forces. Is that right, Clete?
That is correct. Yep.
So I'm curious, Randy, your thoughts since you served in the Middle East. Did we catch people like this in the past, like when they were trying to get close to bases that you were on, bases that our guys were guarding? Was that a frequent occurrence or not?
So that never, it didn't never happen to me personally, but yes, we had attacks done on, whether it be the main gate or a gate of one of the little camps or installations that we had. I know when I was at Camp Taji during the trip that I got injured, when we first went over, my team went out to Taji, right? And so we were out at Taji for the first couple of months, first month or two, but then, they needed more. We got pulled back into Baghdad, which is how I ended up where I was when I was injured. But I will tell you, the funny thing there was all of them, like on that whole installation, half of it was Iraqi. There was a lot of, and then there was half that was American. I think there was 16,000 American soldiers on this installation at this time, right? And most of them, over 85% of them, never left the wire the entire time they were there. But they had a bunch of funny rules, right? Because of the IEDs and stuff. They couldn't take vehicles down dirt roads. They couldn't take vehicles down roads that had more than 1 or 2 IEDs go off, except for Route Tampa, which was the route that Taji is off of. It's also the supply route. And you could set your watch for every morning around 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning for when those convoys would start coming in or going by, going somewhere else. The IEDs would blow up. You know what I mean? And so I guess I kind of lost where I was going with that. But basically, these are just tactics, right? That are being applied. And I don't know. I guess I lost where I was going with that.
That's okay. Yeah, TBIs. It's okay. No worries.
The beauty of all that is they can only do it once.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, the suicide bomber,
Yeah.
For sure. But again, it comes down to think about what it takes to get somebody to go blow themselves up. And it's, for a certain element of the population, it's a whole lot easier than you would think.
Yeah.
Right. So S2, this one to you, one more to Jeff, and then we're on to the main topic of the night. So this website, thereligionofpeace.com, we bring it up on a fairly frequent basis, at least 2 or 3 times a month, to give y'all an update. Islamic terrorists have carried out more than 48,134 deadly terror attacks since 9/11. So these are radical Islamic terrorists. And the atrocity of the week happened in Congo. 52 Christians murdered by Islamic activists. And if we go to the report for August, here's a list of killings in the name of Islam last 30 days. 142 attacks, 18 countries, 520 people killed, 499 injured. This is just in the past 30 days. This is the rolling 30-day report on the religionofpeace.com. Very specific question for you, S2. Why does the legacy / mainstream media never cover this stuff? Because whenever we put it up, people say the same thing. I had no idea.
Because they don't pay attention to it. Their focus is more inward than outward. It's also not in their mandate. They don't want people paying attention to the things that are going on outside the country. So they talk about, unless it's sensationalism like the October 7th attack, they just don't really care. They're more focused on trying to get this country to implode upon itself by playing their propaganda games. And that's clearly what they're doing.
Would you agree with the concept that they sweep a lot of this stuff, most of this stuff, under the carpet because they want the sheeple who watch legacy media to believe that everybody coming from around the world, including a significant portion who hate our guts and hate our way of life, that they don't want the public to be, jaded and against those things possibly?
That could be another reason. I mean, there's a whole complexity around the psychological tactics that they use in the mainstream media. I mean, we all know half of them are in bed with the 3-letter agencies. Pick one. We have CNN, and half of their staff is with the CIA. So
yep.
So I leave this point by saying we have been, preaching for a long, long time that it's really important to pay attention to what's going on outside of our country because it's a harbinger of things to come here. And we literally bat 1,000 when we follow that. Everything that happens abroad, they cook up a recipe. A lot of times they inflict it on a Western country, Great Britain, France, Canada, New Zealand, Australia. Then they bring it to California. And then they bring it to the rest of America. That could be laws, it could be terrorist attacks, could be anything in between. But that's their place for cooking stuff up. So, Jeff, last one for you is kind of on the periphery related to terrorism. There have been a rash of people injured in home invasions in Canada in the past couple of weeks. And the one guy, for example, found somebody in his home. And I want to say that by the time he got to the guy had already raped his young daughter, and he beat the tar out of this guy, and he got charged. They don't have castle doctrine in Canada, right? So you've got this moron chief of police on the left from Canada, then God bless him, one of the greatest sheriffs of all time, not 2 hours away from me on the southwest side of Kissimmee. That's the world famous Grady Judd. He's literally one of the best sheriffs ever. I'm going to play this, Jeff, and then I want to hear your thoughts in general before we hit the main topic. It's 1 minute and 22 seconds total.
Unlikely event that you find yourself the victim of a home invasion, we are urging citizens not to take matters into their own hands.
We have received information on social media that some of the criminals were going to take their criminal conduct into the neighborhoods.
While we don't want homeowners to feel powerless, we urge you to call 911 and do everything you can to keep yourself and loved ones safe until police arrive, and be the best witness possible.
I would tell them, if you value your life, you probably shouldn't do that in Polk County, because the people of Polk County like guns. They have guns. I encourage them to own guns, and they're going to be in their homes tonight with their guns loaded. And if you try to break into their homes to steal, to set fires, I'm highly recommending they blow you back out of the house with your gun.
This could mean locking yourself in a room away from the perpetrators, hiding, fleeing the home, but don't engage unless absolutely necessary. We know the best defense for most people is to comply.
If you're not afraid of a gun, get one. Become proficient. Get a concealed firearms license and carry it. And if you need to shoot somebody, shoot them a lot.
My God, I love Grady Judd.
We don't like the paperwork.
Grady Judd. Yeah,
We don't like
thank
the
you for giving
paperwork.
us Grady Judd. They've said that actually. That's Stu's not making a joke there. They've actually said that.
We need to clone him, actually.
Yeah.
The Canadians have turned into spineless, gelatinous masses. They disarm their public, but not their criminals.
Yeah.
And we heard it before when they had that rash of car theft. So they said, "Well, just leave your keys on a hook near the door, so the criminal doesn't have to search your house to find them." This is a country. I'm going to use a bad word, so I hope we don't get. This is a country of pussies, and it's not. And it's not the people; it's the leadership. They are just a bunch of wusses, and this is why they are becoming a joke, or they are a joke. I've known some good Canadians that would, if you gave them a gun, they take you on, and they've got some good guys in their military, but their government is lost. They're like Britain, and I'm not going to sit by if someone breaks into my house. I've got plenty of ways to make them leave, and they'll get it one way or the other. But
Jeff has about 30 javelinas.
Huh?
Jeff has about 30 javelinas.
I got.
I don't know if it's hard
and they're probably pretty hungry.
Yes, they are.
True story. My brother-in-law, who was a crime scene investigator, this actually made national news. He caught this girl who was a stripper, murdered her boyfriend, fed him to the hogs, sorted through the hogs' shit, found his teeth, drove up I-95 and threw the teeth out the window.
Oh, goodness.
And she got away with it at first. And she was working out of state, and she admitted to a fellow stripper what she'd done. They eventually got her. But, be careful of Jeff. He's got pig family. And, if he wants to get rid of you, he can do it except for your teeth.
Well, the desert is a very big place. But no, I mean, you should not have to cower in your own home.
It's insanity.
Yeah.
What do you say? Hide and comply and so you can be the best witness? How you gonna witness when you're dead?
How about this?
I have a nephew in northern Alberta.
Well,
and you're hiding in a room.
You don't need to be a witness because there's not going to be a trial because you don't
That's
put
right.
the corpse on trial.
That's right.
Yeah, I have a nephew in northern Alberta, and the times that he quoted for response times across Canada for cops is even worse than it is here. Best case scenario, you might get a cop responding in 8 minutes. You're DRT long before that 8 minutes if you're unarmed.
Yeah.
So, it's that cop saying dial 911, wait for the cops. That's a suicide note. You are your own first responder at the end of the day. All right. So before we jump into the main topic, I want to show everybody here that our homepage at survivaldispatch.news, when we're broadcasting live, which is at 7 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday, the video is always at the top. When we're not broadcasting, it goes away and it goes into what's called the sit rep, the situation report here. If you click on the situation report, we try to get these published as early as we can each day. This is all free information. So if you go to survivaldispatch.news, sign up for a free account, you'll get the daily sit reps, situation reports. You'll get the Saturday watch guide. You'll get JJ Morris's instructional videos. Now, if you pay $7.99 a month or $75 a year, you get 2.5 months for free. You get all of this stuff. These are all the sources for today's sit rep, for example. You also get an invite to our super busy Signal chat. Just install Signal, send your phone number to support@survivaldispatch.com. Make sure you're not hiding your number. We'll get an invite to you. The volume of intel in there is just off the chain. I never expected it to grow the legs that it did. But you also get our entire library of 37 Survival Dispatch Insider e-magazines. We sell them for $10 a piece, so it's $370 in free materials there. And you also get early access to multiple instructional videos as well. So with that being said, we're ready to let her rip on tonight's topic. And tonight we want you to understand that it's not over when you think it's over. with terrorist attacks using their current SOP, modus operandi, whatever you want to call it. And everything that they've done since about 2008 in Mumbai, that was the blueprint, and they've used it in large scale attacks like Paris, November 2015, but at multiple other places in smaller scales as well. The intel from Khalid, Sarah Adams, and others says this is precisely what they're going to do here. These are going to be complex coordinated attacks, 10 to 15 tier 2 cities, so 100,000 to 500,000 population, one tier 1 trauma center. And if you look at each of those previous ones, as I mentioned before, Mumbai's a great one, right? So they go to a train station, 2 guys out of, 10 that landed on this boat on the beach, 10 guys, 2 of them go to the train station, kill 50 people in less than 2 minutes flat with full auto AK-47s. Meanwhile, the rest of them are attacking cafes and other locations like that. But then they all came back together again at the big Hotel Mumbai is the movie. If you want to watch it, it's pretty good. And it was just nonstop hell for 3 days. They grabbed people out of their rooms, they tortured them, they killed them. And again, that's the pattern. So we want you to understand that, God forbid, but if you're in one of these tier 2 cities and you get caught on the X, distance equals safety. Get the heck out of Dodge as fast as you possibly can. Just because the bomb stopped doesn't mean the attack's over, So essentially, I'm going to turn this over initially to Khalid just to get the ball rolling here, to make some of the key points of what these look like. What does a complex coordinated attack look like? Khalid, go ahead and take it away.
Okay, the way the blueprint is laid out for the attack in the U.S., you will have between 5 and 7 teams of 6 to 7 terrorists that will branch off into different locations, from schools, commercial areas, shopping malls, office buildings, transport hubs, and they will create their mayhem there. What happens is when they create their mayhem in those places, your EMS, your police all move to that direction, which leaves the rest of the city unprotected. And they then slowly move, and come to that tier 1 medical center. And that's where the actual war starts, the siege starts. They take control of that tier 1 center. What we've heard in the camps inside of Afghanistan is that they will put explosives on the foundations, the foundational pillars of the hospital. So if a breach attempt is made, they will detonate the pillars and bring the hospital down. They will put explosives around the doors so nobody can go out the door. They will use vehicle-based IEDs in the form of ambulances, police cars, that they will detonate to block off roads so people cannot escape. What you need to understand here is what you saw in Mumbai, what you saw in Paris, those were test runs. Everything that's been going on over the past year, and everything that we've been commenting on over the past year, me, Sarah, and a couple other people, with the probing, with the hoaxes, with everything, we laid this out a year ago. This is what's going to happen. This is how you're going to figure it out. This is what is going to be. They're going to start off here, then they're going to do here, then they're going to do here, then they're going to do here. Their entire goal is to understand the response of the police force. How fast does the police get to where and where and where? That's what they use when they decide targets, which is what they're doing right now in Afghanistan. They're picking their targets now. What cities, what targets inside those cities. The problem here is this is only layer 1. The complex coordinated attack is just to draw everyone's attention, all the media, into one location. The second part of the plan is Al-Qaeda is going to hijack planes, and those planes will be detonated in the sky. The suicide bomber will blow the plane up in the air. So the target Al-Qaeda has set for themselves is 60,000 dead. The target, the Islamic State, which is running the ground level assault, they have also said 50 to 60,000. So you are talking about a target that is close to 100,000 people inside the United States in small tier 2 cities, where they can deliver a huge psychological impact to the entire United States. Now, the question here, why?
Yeah, before I move on to Randy, can you address this question from Don Pye? Why would they hit level 1 trauma center, or would they hit other hospitals in the town also be targeted?
That's where I was headed. The reason you're going to a level 1 trauma center is because a level 1 trauma center can handle all of the casualties that you've created around the city. The other hospitals you have are not geared up to handle surgeries. They're not geared up to treat the people for gunshot wounds, for burns, for detonations, for shrapnel. That is what a tier 1 center is for, is to deal with trauma patients. And that's what you're going to create with explosions and the type of attack you're carrying out. So the reason they're attacking the tier 1 medical centers is because that's the trauma center. That's the first place you go. If you go to a regular hospital, yes, they will treat you, but they will have to move you to a tier 1 center outside of your city for further treatment. They will stabilize you and then get you out of the city. When you take away that tier 1 center inside your own city, number one, you've got a huge batch of patients inside the hospital that are admitted and being treated. That's free game for them. The second thing is all the people that you have shot, all the people that have been hit by a suicide blast and burned, have shrapnel, they have nowhere to go.
I appreciate that, Khalid. Thank you. So, Randy, a very specific question for you. Why are secondary strikes often more deadly than the initial attacks in these complex coordinated attacks?
Well, I think it catches people off guard, right? They kind of think, okay, well, that was bad. It was a good thing it wasn't me, but, then they don't. And, and these what we're talking about, the ones we're specifically talking about and how Khalid and all the information's been laid out or what the blueprint is of these attacks is then they're going to attack the first responders, whether it'd probably be both the police, and any fire that show up, because when an ambulance is called, even if it's a heart attack, there is an engine company that is also deployed with that ambulance. So firefighters in a truck will go out even just on a cardiac arrest. So in any big event, there's also going to be firefighters involved. You're going to, you take out those folks and then anybody that starts gathering around to watch, because what do? I mean, when I worked on an ambulance in my early 20s, and there were times that there would be wrecks or something go on, or even at someone's house at 3 o'clock in the morning. And it was amazing, after only being there for a short period of time, how many people came out of their houses and now are in their robes and stuff like that, standing out watching what's going on. So you're going to get some spectators that way. No different than when you see people rubberneck going past a wreck. We've all seen wrecks, but everybody's got to slow down and look one more time, and I think that's, the biggest part will be the element of surprise, because some people will think, okay, that was the initial thing, it's over. And then you kind of expose yourself, and guess what? Then you're like low hanging fruit and they just mow you down.
Good answer, Randy. And it leads right into my question for you as to what makes emergency responders particularly vulnerable following the initial period of an attack, the initial attack right after that. I know that these groups have said they're specifically targeting them, but give me the lay of the land as far as why they're in such grave danger beyond just being threatened.
Because they're hyper focused. I mean, you go into the state when you're in the middle of a traumatic situation where you basically have tunnel vision and you're hyper focused on what's going on at that particular moment. You're not paying attention to the other things that are going on around you. That's a very dangerous situation for the same reasons that Randy laid out. If you're not paying attention, then you're likely going to be a target, particularly if you're in the area of where that first attack took place. They could hit the same place twice and still be able to take a lot of people out.
Yeah, good answer. I appreciate that. So, Jeff, next question for you is, give us the lay of the land as far as how the tactics have significantly evolved over the past 2 decades.
Well, I think they're a lot more coordinated. They're a lot more, for lack of a better word, professional. It's not a hit and run kind of thing, or I run into a crowd and blow yourself up. They're planning, they're preparing more. They're doing in-depth, layered approaches to attacks, where we'll start here and then we'll let them respond, then we'll go here, let this play out and then go there. And I think their plans show a degree of patience. allowing time for the right thing for them to happen before doing the next thing. You take time, you let the responders get there, and then you attack on the other side of town. If you do it all too quickly, then you kind of tip your hand, and then they can say, okay, we're not going to send everybody here. There's other stuff going on too. So you let the response chase its tail for a while. And that shows a degree of patience and planning they really didn't have before.
The patience is a key word for these guys these days, in my opinion. So let's pivot. Let's move on to segment 2, and let's do a mini case study on Mumbai 2008. And I'll be coming to you first, Khalid. So we've laid out the pattern now. Let's look at a very sophisticated example. And keep in mind, this was 10 guys in 2008 Mumbai. 10 guys. Yeah. And they had separate initial attacks. They had separate secondary attacks. And then the tertiary attack is when they all came back together at, I think it's actually called the Taj Mahal Hotel, if memory serves me right. So it was 60 hours from beginning to end, right? These 10 guys traveled basically a day and a half in a like a Zodiac style boat.
It was actually It was actually 3 days, Chris.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I thought it was 36 hours. I must have read that wrong. But either way, they travel a long ways in a Zodiac style boat. They pulled up on the beach. There's all kinds of people on the beach. They get off the beach with these huge bags full of, grenades and firearms and magazines and ammunition. So keep in mind, again, you have a city of 18 million. 10 guys come in and over 60 hours kill 164 people. And wound many, many more people than that. So as I mentioned earlier, they went to a train station, they went to a cafe, and then they hit actually other luxury hotels before they got to the final hotel. They waited for the emergency services to show up before they launched the next phase, grenades, bombs, IEDs. They literally drew them in with the initial attack. And how many times have I said the most famous quote in my mind from 9/11 or 9/11, 1.0 is send everything you've got. Well, when these attacks happen per Khalid's intelligence, Sarah's intelligence, etc., the attacks happen at these soft targets. The call goes out. They send everything there. And Al-Qaeda just walks into the airport with minimal security, hijacks a few planes, puts them up in the air. They may crash them into buildings, but as much as they want to hire death count, there's, what was it, Bojanka? Is that the name of it again, Khalid? Yeah. So they came. Osama bin Laden came up with this plan in the 1990s for a very specific reason. You hijack planes, and of course they have to do it on the ground now because in the air you've got the cabins are locked down, the pilots have guns, etc. So they hijack a few planes at 10 or 15 different airports around the country where they're attacking these tier 2 cities. They get in the air over a city and they blow the plane up in the air. And part of the psychological damage of this is that some of these planes may actually be coming from outside of America and coming into America and then detonating in the air. What that'll do is completely hold up all air travel, air commerce, you name it, because it'll expose just how easy it is to get bombs past the TSA and other security agencies, and they won't risk more bombs on planes because that's precisely what Al-Qaeda has stated they're going to do. They're just going to keep on blowing them up. This is not a one and done like 9/11 1.0 was. This will be kicking off a pretty drastic change in America forever, for that matter. So let me just get through a couple more bullets. Clete, I'm going to turn over to you. So these guys basically, they did something that other terrorists haven't done in the past, where they rushed in and they essentially killed themselves and as many victims as they could. These guys watched their phones, social media, the news agencies to see where the first responders were going, what was happening in these various locations. And they used that to kind of fine tune what they were doing. By the way, there was an American who was in Mumbai, I want to say for about 2 years, who did all of the intelligence work on this attack and then handed it over to the terrorists. And, just a complete scumbag, but he avoided, complete detection there. So anyway, at the end of the day, 10 guys overwhelmed the emergency resources, citywide paralyzed. They started, setting stuff on fire. rooms and hotels on fire. It was very, very calculated. So, Khalid, I'm going to turn it over to you and get you to take it from there. Then I have questions for everybody else.
All right. So Mumbai, the way Mumbai worked is they took a boat and they landed off of the coast of Mumbai, right on the water in Mumbai. When they entered into Mumbai, all 10 of them were together. They split off at that point and they went in teams of 2. It was teams of 2 they moved in. So what they did is the first place they came across was a cafe. They shot up the cafe, detonated the cafe, game over. That was done. Another team went and took out a synagogue. Another team went and moved from point A, which was the cafe, moved to a train station and just opened fire and laid out 40, 50 people right there. No detonation there. Then they slowly moved and ended up at the Taj Hotel. As they were moving, they were planting IEDs as they went along. Now, the thing you guys have to understand is they would not have been able to do this without the help of David Headley. David Headley was the American that the FBI caught in the US smuggling drugs. And the FBI said to him that we want you to go to Pakistan, infiltrate Lashkar-e-Taiba, and become an intelligence source for the CIA. And you can read David Headley's complete story on the ProPublica website. They've done a great background on him, on how he was recruited in and how he moved through. I, to this day, don't believe David Headley was that easily entered into Lashkar-e-Taiba. Somebody opened a door for him and said, you need to take this guy. Because I've seen how long it takes for a terrorist group to embed someone, especially a white American who's not a Muslim. And for him to join that easily, that raised a lot of questions for me. He spent a year in Mumbai doing full recon, full surveillance on the entire city, picking out targets, understanding security protocols, and reported all of that back to Lashkar-e-Taiba. Then they launched the attack. The Mumbai hotel, the Taj Hotel in Mumbai, was under siege for 3 solid days. And the way we remember it, it was Thanksgiving weekend, 2008, in the US, and everyone's TV was tuned to Mumbai, and they were watching what was going on there. Police officers were shot by snipers. Outside, police officers were shot by snipers. They had bombs blowing up outside. Inside the hotel, they were going room to room, checking people's passports. If you were a foreigner, you were shot on site. If you were a member of staff, they tortured you. When it was all said and done, the Indian Navy commandos were dropped onto the top of the hotel, and they had to clear from the top down, slowly coming through. And you have to think of a hotel with 355 rooms, and they had to clear every single room coming down. That was not an easy job. So when it was all said and done, there was only one terrorist left alive, Ajmal Kasab. And when we saw the confession video that he did, it raised even more questions for us, because the way he was not talking like a jihadi. He was talking like someone who had been puppeteered. A jihadi has because we've interrogated jihadis at Command 11. We know how they talk. We know what their language is like. We know what their mannerisms are like when they're being interrogated. Ajmal Kasab was like a sheep. He was literally whatever you wanted to do with him, you could do with him. And whatever you wanted him to say, he would say. So we had a lot of questions after it was done as to how Mumbai really happened. We know David Headley had a big role in it. We know Lashkar-e-Taiba was the orchestrator of the whole thing, but we don't know how they were able to carry out what they were able to carry out. Because to understand that, you'd actually have to get into the camp, the Lashkar's terror camp, and figure out from there how they were able to do this. But that's what Mumbai was. But one more thing, Mumbai was then advanced and repeated in Pakistan in Army Public School, where they killed 144 kids. The standoff inside of Army Public School against Pakistan's Army commandos from the very beginning was 8.5 hours to kill 6 terrorists.
That's a huge amount of resources. So, Randy, another very specific question for you on this. What lessons do you think global terrorist organizations learn from the success of the Mumbai attack pattern? this new SOP that they laid out that they're calling the the blueprint for ISIS and other terrorist organizations now.
Well, I'd say look how successful it was. They didn't have to blow anybody up. I mean, there was a couple of blasts, but I mean, as far as they got a lot of mileage out of those 10 guys, didn't they? When you train a guy just to put on a vest and walk in and blow himself up, as you mentioned earlier, you only get one time. These guys got to move to several places. Then they got even all the way to the hotel. It was a pretty successful mission as far as you would concern as what they wanted to do. Then you look at the press coverage, the shock value, all of it rolled up into one. It was just, for them, was a win-win-win. And it said, the light bulb probably went on. This is how it's done. And I happen to believe that those folks probably got a little training from some intelligence professionals before they actually did this mission. Because this, as I stated many times, these aren't the same type of guys I was fighting when I joined up. It wasn't the same guys that we fought early in Afghanistan or even later, but somewhere a little bit later than that. And now we're looking at it, but, facing some, I don't think they'll have it on the scale that we do, but true professional fighters, right?
Yeah.
Which there is a difference. And you want to know the difference? You look at how many people we lost in Vietnam. In Vietnam, we fought a commando style enemy. And this guy was very dedicated, very highly trained, and was just like the jihadist, right? They built their coffin before they even left that night because they expected to die in this. And so that's what we're facing.
I appreciate that, Rand. It's great insight. S2, I've actually got a couple questions for you. You can address one or both, whatever suits you, but I'm curious on what specific elements of the Mumbai attack demonstrate the calculated nature of the secondary strike strategy. The other part would be what aspects of the attack have we seen replicated in other terrorist operations? So take your pick. You're on mute, S2.
I'll take the second question because it'll answer the first question.
Perfect.
So what we saw coordinated multi-target assaults. With the Mumbai feature, the attacker struck multiple locations simultaneously. That created the widespread chaos that overwhelmed security forces. The replications that we've seen in this, we saw the same thing with the Paris attacks. Okay, we've done history on the Paris attacks. There was also the 2013 Westgate Mall attack in Kenya, where al-Shabaab militants attacked the Westgate shopping mall in Nairobi. And they were targeting a single high-profile location, but they were also using a prolonged siege, much as the way they did in Mumbai. And another place where you saw this replicated was the 2019 Easter Sunday bombings in Sri Lanka. That was coordinated suicide bombings that targeted churches and luxury hotels in Colombo. Another thing that we've seen replicated was commando-style tactics. Unlike the traditional suicide bombings from the past, the attackers used small unit tactics. They were operating like a small guerrilla army with semi-automatic weapons, grenades, and explosives. They engaged in prolonged firefights and hostage taking. Where we saw that replicated was in 2014 with the Peshawar school attack in Pakistan. May not know much about that, but basically you had the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan militants that stormed an army public school, and they killed 149 people, including 132 children. There was another replication of that in 2015 with the Bataclan attack in France, where the ISIS guys held hostages in the Bataclan theater for hours. They were engaged in shootouts with the cops. It basically resembled Mumbai's prolonged engagement tactics. And then you had the 2016 Dhaka Cafe attack, where ISIS affiliated, they attacked a bakery, and they took hostages for 12 hours, which also replicated the use of the siege tactic. And a major feature of all of this was the use of technology for coordination. In Mumbai, the attackers used GPS handsets, they used satellite phones and voice over IP to communicate with their handlers in Pakistan. They were monitoring it via live television, and they were directing the operation from Pakistan in real time.
Yep.
Same
Good
places
point.
we saw replications of this was the 2015 Paris attacks. We saw it in the 2016 Brussels bombings. We saw it in the 2020 Vienna attack in Austria. They were all using social media messaging platforms. They were using advanced technology to guide their actions based on direction they were getting from their handlers. Now, another thing that they did is they were targeting soft targets that had high profile civilians that would regularly frequent these places. For the Mumbai, they targeted the civilian heavy locations like hotels, a railway station, and a cafe that they were aiming for maximum casualties. So where we saw that replicated again was the 2013 Westgate Mall attack, where a lot of the people that were expatriates and very affluent locals would frequent. We saw it in 2016 Nice attack in France. Same deal. They were after these places where affluent people would gather because they're high profile people, but still a soft target. And then we saw it in 2017 with the London Bridge attack in the UK. And lastly, I'll finish this this tirade off with they were using what looks like to me a combination of terrorism and guerrilla warfare. Um, they were relying the attackers had trained to kill in Mumbai versus using solely using explosives. So as Randy pointed out, that takes some time to do. Number one, it's part of the radicalization process that they go through. And they also have to have the knowledge, and they got that knowledge from somebody. We don't know who. But where we saw this replicated was in 2014, the Sydney Cafe siege in Australia. Same deal. They were using small arms and using guerrilla warfare tactics. 2016 Orlando nightclub shooting. ISIS guy or somebody that pledged allegiance to ISIS killed 49 people in the Pulse nightclub using small arms in a prolonged attack. And then we had the 2022 Istanbul bombing in Turkey, where the attack on Istiklal Avenue that had something to do with Kurdish militants. I don't remember what that was, but they combined explosives with a coordinated strike on a civilian area. So,
City Hall.
Say again.
Crocus in Russia. Crocus City Hall in Russia.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. We kind of saw that. I don't know that it was at the same level of sophistication as all of these were, because one, I don't know the details about any of the technology they were using, or if they were just they had a plan, obviously. They came in, they executed the plan, but I don't know if they had a handler the way a lot of these other attacks took place.
Don't forget Beslan in 2004, when the Chechens took over that school.
Hold that thought, Jeff, because that's where I wanted to go with you next. I was debating whether or not we just call it a day because, S2's very comprehensive answers. We're all done. Our work's done here. We can go home, sort of thing, or not. But no, I appreciate all of that. I got to ask S2, like, what's with the Seattle Space Needle behind you? You didn't go woke on us and go to the left coast, did you?
No, I'm out there spying on Antifa.
Good answer. well done.
Didn't you recognize the shape of his head?
Right. So, Jeff, actually, this is precisely where I wanted to go with you to clean up on Mumbai. Was attacks prior to Mumbai where there were elements that they combined together finally in Mumbai. If you could just give us your take on that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a process, and it's a learning process. It's just like a military force develops tactics, and then they're tested in the battlefield. And the ones that don't work, you don't use, and the ones that work, you expand on. That's where small unit tactics came about instead of charging a line and getting mowed down by machine guns. Sometimes it takes us a while, but we do figure out what works and what doesn't. Beslan was probably one of the first large-scale attack and hostage situations. They went in, they took like over 1,100 hostages, and just a boatload of kids. And when the Russians finally went in after 2 days, and they gave no food and water, by the way, they just left them in a gymnasium wired up to explode. 338 people, I think, were killed. And all the hostages, it lasted 2 days. They put them all in the gymnasium and wired it up with high explosives. I don't know that they had, command and control from outside the gym, but they were Chechen fighters who had military experience. They had combat experience. These were not guys, that a true believer that you groom on the internet and turn him into a soldier for 5 minutes before he goes in and kills himself. These guys were battle hardened soldiers. They were fighting against the Russians. They were the Chechen separatists, and
great answer, Jeff. Yeah, great answer. I appreciate that. And we're gonna move into Paris 2015 for a quick case study on it as well. There's a question from the audience here. Do you guys have an approximate time frame on when these attacks in the United States would occur? Khalid's intel right now is showing somewhere between November and Ramadan, which is February 17th or 18th. It kicks off in 2026. But that period of time is critical for this stuff, basically. So let's move on to Paris. And Khalid, I'm going to come to you first, but Paris is essentially another evolution. A good choice of words on Jeff's part, as far as it's a process, it's a learning process. And same idea, though, where you had these complex coordinated strikes against multiple locations across the city, and they completely overwhelmed the city's emergency response capabilities, which in turn fostered like just insane chaos. If you look at the footage, it's pretty crazy. So you've got multiple teams striking 6 different locations almost simultaneously, which is pretty crazy. There were suicide bombings outside of the Stade de France, and that was designed to trigger evacuation protocols that would push people towards the next attack zones. And that's really what we're trying to get at tonight, is that a lot of this stuff is essentially herding the sheeple. They attack in one specific location, knowing precisely how you're going to exfil. There was a bomb threat in New York City maybe 4 weeks ago or so, and it's highly likely that was used. It was in Times Square. It's highly likely that was initiated by or at least at the very least used by ISIS to look at where were the first responders coming from, how long did it take them to get them, but just importantly, where did the people go? Because that's where they set their secondary, attacks in these types of attacks, where there, multiple different stages to it and stuff. So there was a big attack at a concert hall, the Bataclan, and that was 20 minutes after the initial shootings. And essentially what it did is it caught first responders between multiple different scenes. Like, they gave it enough time for those guys to leave home base, the first responders, either get all the way to the other scene, the previous scene, or close to the previous scene, and then they kick something else off. If you look at the map of all the little, bubbles of where Paris, happened, Mumbai was a very interesting pattern where they went from here to here to here to here. That they didn't do that in Paris. In Paris, they lit everything up, as I already mentioned, almost simultaneously. But the big one, they waited for 20 minutes at the big, target before they let stuff loose, because there was nobody left to respond. It's back to my comment: send everything you've got. If you send everything you've got, thinking that that's the one and only attack, and then a bigger attack happens as the secondary attack and potentially third and fourth attacks, pretty hard to respond to that, especially with law enforcement that's not trained for this stuff. So basically these guys, they used, regular phones, smartphones for communications. It was nothing, particularly, spectacular. They had studied the emergency response routes. So they knew exactly where the cops were going to come from. They knew exactly where the paramedics were going to come from. And they positioned themselves along those paths because they went after the first responders. They targeted areas that are specifically known to promote Western values that are like the, antithetical to, the Muslim world, the radical Islamic world. At the end of the day, they ran out of resources in Paris, and we will run out of resources as well, which is another reason to hit tier 2 cities. Buffalo is a tier 2 city. The numbers of pre and post defund the police is crazy. But what's even crazier is that Keith Graves will tell you, for example, cops hired after 2020, many of them are nowhere near as competent as the pre-2020 cops. So even if you had a 20% drop in headcount because of defund the police, it's probably the equivalent of 40, 50% because you filled those positions with people who really weren't operating at the same level. So Buffalo has 25 members on their SWAT team. That's it, 25 members. So how do 25 trained professionals respond to these complex coordinated attacks? Yeah, they've got something like 700, regular officers, but they have zero training, nada. Mike Glover touched on that last night. So I'm going to get off the soapbox and turn it over to Khalid to walk everybody through the rest of the Paris attack. And then I've got questions for everybody else, and then we'll move on to the next segment.
Paris was a very interesting attack. Their first target, the Stade Francais, the president of Paris, the president of France was at a football match inside the stadium at the time of the first attack. And the objective was that if we can take a big target, a high value target in the first move, it'll move all of the police force to the stadium, and we'll have the entire city open to us. So that was a calculated move. And the thing you have to understand, the reason that we study terrorism, we study the tactics, because every single attack is a maturation of what they did before. And the advantage we've got is everything they're doing there, they've done here. They've done here in Pakistan. So we've seen their move. We've seen their war of attrition, where they slowly move into a city, pick off a round of targets, move farther in, take out another round of targets, move farther in, take out another round of targets, finally getting to the army post or to the police station and laying siege to that. So we've seen them practice this tactic everywhere throughout Pakistan. What they did in Paris is they said, okay, let's go after the president. He's in that stadium. Let's go after the president. If we can get him, then all of the police will move to the stadium, because the president was just assassinated. Everyone's going to move there. It leaves the entire city open to us. We can lay mayhem everywhere. They launched sustained simultaneous attacks throughout Paris. They slowly moved, and ended up in one place. Exact same concept as what they did in Mumbai, but at a more mature level. That instead of going different teams, they said at one time, shoot everybody in. Let's move. Let's get the activity running, and let's get the first responders moving. Now, I'm going to connect this to the U.S. The past year, we have been monitoring every single hoax, every single incident, every single problem that happened, because they're doing the same thing in the U.S. They're looking at what routes the first responders are taking. When they call in a bomb threat to a shopping mall or to a commercial area or to a school, they're looking to see where everybody is moved to, because that's their secondary target. That's where they're going to detonate the IED. So again, the mentality of the terrorist is maturing just like a soldier's mentality matures. As they study, as they understand, as they carry out attacks, they're improving the way they do things. The problem is, until you break their back, as long as they didn't have U.S. weapons, they couldn't carry out these types of attacks, because there was only a certain level you could reach, and then you had to stop. Now you've got high-tech weaponry that makes the attack much more lethal. And the fear we have in the US and in Europe is that the attack is now going to be 100 times worse than what we've seen anywhere else. Because you've practiced it, you've tested out the theory, you've figured out that doesn't work, let's try it this way. You figured out that didn't work, let's try it this way. And you've moved out and you've hit different targets in the West. You've hit different targets in Russia. where we are right now is when you look at Paris and Mumbai and you put the both of them together, that gives you a rough idea of what the attack in the US is going to look like. They are going to overwhelm your resources. I'll go back to Buffalo. Before defund the police, it was 1,100 police officers on the police force. After defund the police, it was 880. And the SWAT team is 25. When you have 5-6 different targets attacked inside of Buffalo, New York, where do you go first? And that's what they're counting on, is that we overwhelm the system and the EMS system, the emergency system collapses. 911 will be flooded. Forget 911 working. The reason we keep saying to people over and over and over and over that you have to protect yourself, because there's no one that's coming to save you. And if you're not protecting yourself, then you're part of the body count. Because we know what's going to happen. Your police can't handle what's coming. And until you call in your special forces, until you call in your military, this thing will not settle down.
Right. And I would also add that, some other governments, especially the Russians, they're not as averse to casualties as we are. So some people would say if a tier 1 trauma center has been taken hostage by ISIS, just bomb the building. Like the Russian FSB would do that in the blink of an eye. No American commander is going to make that call, which means the only option is to storm those buildings with, Delta Force level guys, FBI, HRT teams, that sort of stuff. But I want to move on to Randy here, because for those of you who don't know, not only was Randy a Green Beret, before that he was a paramedic. And Randy, question for you is, what specific vulnerabilities in the emergency response protocols were exploited in the Paris attacks?
Well, I think Khalid eloquently laid that out. Really it comes into resources, right? So for example, when I was on like and this was back in the 80s, and it was a small community, and really we only had 2 ambulances that did 911, right? It was a small, but how that worked was there were times, yes, that both would be in duty, but when one would get called out, even in the middle of the night, the other one would have to get up, get in their ambulance, and go post at there would be a predetermined location where you would post. So now, because if another call comes in, you're having to cover both areas instead of just one. And that's like at a small level, but that's how all emergency services work. You don't have enough to where if 50 events went off, even in New York City at once, they don't have enough resources to do that. It's just not how things are designed. And of course, you can't afford to have on 100 crews, all the time to cover every little, it just isn't the way it works. So it comes down to manpower, vehicles, how many that you have. And then once those are deployed, in this scenario that we're talking about, what happens when those get destroyed? It's the same thing that happened when the towers fell. Those engines were destroyed and those crews were killed. They are now gone. So you don't just have the replacements either to just pop in there. So,
well, one quick question for you, Randy, before we move on. Another one of the reasons that they're targeting these tier 2 cities is because of the limited ability to call in mutual aid from law enforcement and paramedics in their periphery, because they're small towns, right? Relatively speaking. In when that happens, have you ever heard of or seen a situation where the call goes out to everybody, all hands on deck? Like, even if you clocked out half an hour ago, get your ass back here, get on an ambulance, get in the cop car, whatever. Is that something that could potentially happen in this type of scenario?
Well, I'm sure that would. We just mentioned how many cops they have in that particular area. I would imagine if that happens often, they are going to, because as we all know, if you're any type of first responder, you're, back in the day, you had pagers. Everybody's got your phone number now. They're going to send out a message. It's all computerized. They're just going to send out the all hands on deck alert. Boom. And that's what they would do. That's exactly what will happen. But then again, those people have to then come in. Yeah. They're not already just sitting there waiting. And then, like I said, it comes down to vehicles. How many vehicles does this place have when those first are destroyed or there or now into whatever scene happened? Those are out of the fight also. You're going to have enough vehicles. So you can see how a community could get overwhelmed very easily.
Yeah.
And why would you do that? Because like we've been discussing, man, the amount of confusion. And then if you have any guys left, you know, they're going to have a fairly easy time in the beginning. Now, if this goes on for days, you know, it's what I said earlier. If we deployed the National Guard out to all these places, that's going to help curb and maybe stop what initially happens. But I don't think that you have to have really more than that, because if something happened for a sustained 2 or 3 days, like let's say some of these cities, you're 3 or 4 days into it, you're going to see the American public come out that have guns. You will see people then come out and take control of their own communities because they have no choice. Because as we've already stated, at this point, no one's coming to help you.
Right. So I appreciate that. You set me up for a question for us too that I didn't have in the brief. As to, we've had conversations before with Keith Graves on this topic, you, Mike Sterling, myself, probably Jeff as well. And Keith said, one of the things he said is you have to consider that if something like this kicks off, there are going to be some law enforcement officers who say, screw that shit, I'm protecting my family. I'm not going to save somebody else or protect somebody else and leaving my family vulnerable. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. Then I do have a Paris question for you, and you're on mute just to make sure you know.
So going back to something that Randy said earlier about, actually, I think it was you that said it, where you're talking about the experience level of some of the police in New York. We've had this defund the police thing going on now for almost 5 years.
Yep.
And I mean, they're still trying to push it in all of the blue states and blue cities. And I think what you're going to see is you're not necessarily going to see a screw it mentality. It's going to be more like I'm in a full-fledged panic, I don't know what to do mentality. And I think Mike Glover's hit on that a couple of times too.
So are you suggesting as to that other than us here in Florida, that y'all have acorn cops in your states as well? That's not just a Florida specific thing.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere.
Funny, not funny. I know. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's everywhere. But that's my thoughts on that. I don't think you're necessarily going to have people intentionally running away from things. They just don't know what to do. They're not trained in what's the word I'm looking for? They're not trained in spontaneous violence. In fact, they're discouraged from it.
Yeah, exactly. So here's the Paris specific question that I had for you is, how did the terrorists use the city's geography to maximize the effectiveness of all these coordinated attacks? Pardon me.
Well, I've looked at that, and it was kind of interesting because they used, if you look at the distances of the targets, they picked the furthest target away to hit first, and they worked their way back in. So it was almost as if they were herding civilians into a kill zone. Because once again, when they hit the big stadium, people were going to be going away from the stadium. So that forced them to go back into the cities where, as Randy just said, you have less mobility within those small towns and those small roads to be able to get out of harm's way. So that's basically an ambush.
Good answer.
A well laid out ambush, we'll say.
Yeah. But perfect choice of words there, S2. Do you have anything else you want to add before I move on to Jeff?
No, I think that's about it.
Okay, I appreciate it. It was a good answer, good information. So Jeff, batting cleanup again here. What unique elements of the Paris attack pattern have influenced subsequent terrorist operations?
Well, like you mentioned before, I think it's just a culmination of a learning curve. And they saw what worked in Mumbai, and they probably saw what didn't work in Mumbai, and they applied what worked, and they didn't apply what didn't work. It's
Let me put a finer point on it for you. How much did the precise timing affect the success of their mission?
Well, I think that was very important because, and again, they exercised patience to let attack A develop and let the response to attack A develop fully and draw resources before initiating attack B. If you do them too close together, then the emergency services realizes, okay, we've got a bigger problem here. Okay, everybody kind of hold your ground a little bit and we'll wait and see what happens next. But if you've got to give them time to commit their resources, to move their resources, and then that leaves a vulnerability somewhere else. You can't be too rash. You've got, and they showed enough patience, and that's why it played out the way it did.
So I'm going to make an executive decision here. We're at the halfway point of this brief, and I am not going to keep all of you on for another couple hours because your wives will hate me even more than they do already. So here's what we're going to do tonight is we're going to fast forward right now to the hero of the day, the reader submitted story of the day, the conflicted question of the day. It's going to take us 10-15 minutes to get through all of that. Tomorrow, we're not going to do any updates unless there's something critical that Khalid wants, to get out there. And we're going to jump into the second half of this because I don't want to just run through it. It's critical information because from here on for the balance of this brief is the information that, truly could be life-saving for you. So we'll do that tomorrow night. So let me just get a little bit ahead in the brief here. And I'll bring up the hero first. And here's something interesting, just what a small world this is. So this gentleman here is Master Sergeant Gary Gordon, who sacrificed his life while protecting a downed Black Hawk in Somalia in 1993. So when I came across this, I texted it to our good friend Jeff Nicholas, who was a 160 Night Stalker, a Black Hawk pilot. He was in Mogadishu. And I said, did you happen to know this guy? And he said, yeah, he was a Ranger. And he was a really, really good guy, and he didn't even hesitate to get in the fight in Somalia. So hats off to him for sure. This is the epitome of being an American hero right there. The next one up, I'm going to have to double check.
He was also a Green Beret. I have to say that because
appreciate it.
You mentioned he was a Ranger. He did come up in Ranger Battalion, I do believe, but he also became a Green Beret while he was at CAG. So.
Gotcha. Yeah, Jeff just mentioned the part with regards to the Ranger, but thank you for mentioning that he was a Green Beret. It is the epitome of an American hero, period. Like there's nothing else that you can say to that whatsoever. It's funny, like when we get some of the left-wing socialist commie keyboard commandos, they run their gums like this. But for a fact, if they were ever on the X, they'd run away like pansies. They also like to run their gums at people who are on, our podcast and stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure not one of them would run their mouth like that to somebody like Mike Glover. So,
well, to your point, Chris, that guy, Sugar, and one other guy, there were two of them. A lot of people have seen the movie Black Hawk Down.
Yes.
But you got to realize there were two of these guys, right? And they were senior guys. And they were up in an overwatch position with one of the other birds. They had to ask numerous times to be let down there so they could guard that bird. They were denied 2 or 3 times before they were actually given approval. And what you have to absolutely know about what you just said is both of these guys knew they didn't have enough ammo to fight off the entire crowd when they got out of that helicopter.
That's crazy. I didn't know that. Wow. I mean, that truly is heroism. God bless him for sure. Yep. So surprise. The next one is a hashtag Florida man again. Actually, it's Florida woman cop in this particular case. And this one was submitted by the prolific Dale and Tim Smith and a couple other people, Astro Mom and Dee Dee and whatnot. They have this, friendly competition going on of who can post the most valuable information to our private signal chat. And I mean, they're all killing it. It's just awesome. I saw the volume today and I saw S2 is in there, which means that it's taking things to a whole new level. And I looked at it and I thought, there's no way I'm going to catch up on this. I've got way too much work to do, but man, it's really, really awesome. S2, while you're on, thank you for putting so much effort into sharing valuable information. So this basically here is, there was a 41-year-old lady, and I don't know why they had her pull over. I don't know why she charged the cops, but she gets out of the driver's seat, looks like a possessed person running with a 16-inch knife. And we've covered this, topic ad nauseum in the past, but anybody who's been a cop for any period of time will tell you they'd much rather be shot than stabbed. 95% of the time, if you get shot, you will survive. You get stabbed once, you have a 50% chance of survival. You get stabbed 2 or more times, it drops to less than 5%. Stabbing is no fun. So if you are ever asked by somebody in a course, how close do you let somebody get to you that's running at you with a knife? You don't. The second they run at you with a knife, even if they're 50 feet away, you shoot them, because the problem is, if you don't hit the heart, don't hit a major organ, the brain or something like that, they will probably have enough gas to get to you and still stab you before bleeding out and dying. So distance is your friend. This is a pretty crazy video. Let's watch this here before we wrap things up. It's 49 seconds long.
Put the knife down! Oh, God, that first suspect's down. She got a taser. We did taser. She came at me with a knife. What the hell did you expect me to do? Put the knife down.
Heck, I was thinking she only shot her twice.
So, I mean, this is because we're wrapping up early, and that's a pretty crazy situation. Go ahead and speak to it, Randy, and anybody else who wants to speak to it before we wrap it up.
Well, as you mentioned, and everybody knows, and it's the military as well, somebody's charging with a knife. It's like the Chef Grady said, shoot them and shoot them as many times as you can, because if you don't stop them and they get to you and they get you with that knife, man, it is a lot of times it's lethal, man, because they're going to go for your neck up here in your upper chest. And if they get that knife sunk into you, that might be all it takes. So you don't have much time and you don't get a redo. And I was just thinking, she's lucky they only shot her twice, man. I would have, but they were also in a precarious situation, because you look at where other cop was, he was not very far off that line.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I thought the same thing. I was surprised they didn't shoot her more myself. Jeff, go ahead.
Well, yeah, she had been. They were trying to repo her car, and she fled the repo guy, and then did a hit and run on another car, and that's why they were pulling her over. So it wasn't like she was robbing a bank. So why she came out with a knife, who freaking knows? I mean, that's crazy. So she was obviously nuts, but she did survive.
Thank you for that.
She's lucky.
I can say this as somebody that teaches knife defense to civilians. The things that I do in my classes demonstrate the fact that the knife is the most unpredictable weapon in the world. And the way she was holding that knife, she would have had an advantage.
Yes.
Yeah, no,
it happens fast. Real fast.
Yeah, boy, howdy. But I appreciate you adding that S2 from a very first-hand perspective. Khalid, last word of the night goes to you.
That looked like someone who didn't take their happy pill in the morning, to be honest.
Big mistake.
America, the American pharmaceutical industry has plugged people with so many SSRIs.
Yeah.
That, I mean, you've turned everybody into a zombie. You've turned them into monsters. And if they don't take their pills that day, I mean, this is what they act like. Because the way her demeanor, the way her eyes looked, the way she came out of that car, that was not a normal human being that came out of that vehicle. I mean, I would have emptied a magazine into her. That wouldn't have been 2 shots. That would have been a full magazine into her.
Yeah, I'm with Randy on that one. I was surprised that she stopped at 2 shots. I wouldn't have. But no.
I will say, I mean, she wasn't far away, but that was a good shot. She dropped it quick.
Yeah,
dropped it quick.
I was going to say, just keep in mind that I'm the guy who shot the FBI agent in the FBI training at the criminal museum in Las Vegas and pissed my wife and Mike Sterling off to no end, right? You go in as a 3-man team, and it's a really cool training simulation system that they have. And we go into the living room. We've all got a pistol, and the guy jumps up from behind the sofa. So I smoked him, and they were like, well, your scenario is over. You killed the cop, and you all failed. And Mike looks at me. He's like, "You asshole!"
He surprised me.
What kind of cop jumps up from behind the sofa? Come on,
looking like the bad guy.
What friggin' SOP is that, for crying out loud? So actually, I lied. There is one last thing we got to cover tonight to get out of the way, and that's the conflicted question. S2 will turn it over to you.
Okay, so for those of you that haven't been paying attention, hit that like button, like your RFK in the Senate hearing making fools of Democrats.
Yes.
Here we go.
Amen to that.
You've managed to keep your family safe for the past 2 months, but your luck has run out. Your house has just been invaded by 5 radical jihadists. The men have tied you and your family up and looted your home of all of your food and supplies. Before they leave, they noticed your religious paintings on your wall. While being held at gunpoint, one of the men said that if you deny your faith, he will spare your lives. But if you do not, he will kill you and take your family. Would you defend your faith and your God, or would you deny your God in hopes of saving your family?
Oh man, this is a brutal one. Khalid,
this is an
you're
easy
going
one.
first because you're already on stage.
No, listen, look, having dealt with these animals, there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee. If you renounce your faith just because they say so, it doesn't mean they're not going to chop your head off. It doesn't mean they're not going to kill your family.
Right.
God, and you hold your faith. That's the saving grace that you have. And if you're going to abandon your faith in that situation, then you'll abandon your faith in everything else as well. So I have no guarantees. If you got me tied up and you've got my family hostage and you say, well, give up being a Muslim and we'll let you survive, I don't believe you. I know you're not Muslims to begin with. So no, go ahead and take my life. That's it. Go ahead.
Fair enough. Randy?
Well, Khalid's right, and he knows exactly. The jihadist, do you think that guy's going to let you go as a Christian man? I will say, first of all, 5 of them are not going to take my house. This is not happening. They will not tie me and my family up. That I can promise you. But it's the same thing with these conflicted questions. They're supposed to be after the apocalypse. You think you're still going to be living in your house like we are today? That isn't going to be. It just will not be. Yeah. So anyway, that being said, the question is, what would I do? I'm definitely not denouncing them because I'm telling you right now, they're still going to kill me afterwards. They're just going to make fun of me for denouncing my faith right before they do it. That's all that's going to happen. And there's no guarantee they're not going to kill my family right there too, because we're all Christians. Now, if they were lucky, maybe they took them as slaves, right? They're not going to die then. But the fact of the matter is, you're already all dead in this situation. That's a fact.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. S2, have you got anything to add to that?
Not giving you anything you want. That's giving into the terrorist. Not doing it.
Amen to that. I couldn't agree more. Jeff, you get final crack at it.
I'm going to be the contrarian here. Am I giving up my faith by lying to some psychopath? Hell no. I'm not giving up my faith. It's just that I'll let him think that. If it saves my family, they're just words. They don't have meaning if you don't believe it. It's just like you could find some. We saw the guys on 9/11 were running around and acting like party hardy guys, but they were very devout in their faith. They were willing to die for it. Were they serious when they went to strip clubs and acted like and had liquor? No, they didn't believe that. So all because you say it doesn't mean it's true. So if it gets me to where I can protect my family and keep them away from these idiots, yeah, what the hell?
Honestly, Jeff, that was going to be my first answer.
I'm going with Randy on this one. I'm cheating. I'm not following the context of the card. But if 5 guys try to enter my home, the first phone call is going to be send 5 body bags.
If they capture me, then at that point, then I probably deserve to be captured because I obviously don't have good grouping on my when I shoot.
Or you were still asleep, right? You just
Well,
weren't
see, I was
prepared, and they
hungry,
just
but,
walked in and said, "Hey, buddy, hold a gun."
Holy crap, that's friggin' funny. So just a quick shout out to our sponsors, CCW Safe. If you have self-defense insurance, get rid of it. Get self-defense coverage. Go to ccwsafe.com. Actually, or click the link down below. We don't get affiliate money, but it tells them that you originated with us. They pay us a stipend each month, just like Carnival does, helps us defer the multiple expenses that we have. Carnival, by the way. So these guys listen to their customers. So the bags, 6 ounces of meat, which makes 6 servings, 150 grams of super high quality sirloin. A bunch of people said we would like single serve packets. So when we go out on the trail, if we're hiking, hunting, fishing, or whatever, we can take single serves with us, reconstitute on the trail, cook it up right there. So next week, end of next week, they will be shipping single serves inside of a brand new box that they've got. Really cool stuff. If you're not worried about going off trail, go ahead and order some right now. Use the code EATMEAT, all one word. You get 10% off. You always get free shipping from Carnival on all orders over $99. But much just like CCW Safe, they help us defer a lot of costs. We really appreciate, and we really like the guys at Carnival big time, by the way. Yeah. There are people, you know, you can see Randy and I, we're team Carnival. The other guys, those laggards over there, I don't know. Well, I can forgive S2. He might have a hat on. We just can't see.
I ordered some more a couple days ago, so I'm waiting for it.
I have one hat that I wear all the time, and that's what people know me by.
Right. All right. So listen, we'll be back tomorrow night, usual time, 7 p.m. Eastern, and we're going to hit the second half of tonight's brief. There's a lot of really, really important, good information, which is why I didn't want to do it in injustice and try to blaze through it tonight. But between now and then, please like, share, comment, subscribe. God bless America, and enjoy the closing video. We got another new video.
The direction for the FBI is to track down any individuals with any terrorist ties whatsoever, whether it be ISIS or another foreign terrorist organization, and now to include the new designations of the cartels down south and elsewhere.
We will put on the world's largest manhunt and we will find you.